All right. So the Gemara we're up to is Rosh Hashanah Daf Tet, and the previous shiurim are all uploaded on you call it the YouTube channel, I guess, which is basically just for our shiur in case you miss a shiur or you're traveling or whatnot. And of course, tonight there are also other events. But I said, Torah Matehei Aleh, we have to continue learning. So we've been going through different aspects of the Rosh Hashanah of the one we call Rosh Hashanah, which in addition to what has to do with the years, Rosh Hashanah L'Shanim, there's also the Rosh Hashanah for Shemitah and Yovel. And we have actually seen the Gemara for Shemitah already. That's what we talked about last year on Daf Chet Amud Bet, Shmitin, right? I believe we did, right? So we talked about, according to some, you have this 10-day period between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim, where they sit with the crowns on their head of freedom, and they're basking in their newfound freedom, Ochlin, V'shotim, V'smeichim, and they're ready for an event that is going to happen on Yom Kippurim, on the sounding of the shofar. The last thing that the Gemara had discussed, which was Daf Chet Amud Bet to Tet Amud Aleph, was the Machloket between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda on the subject of how to count the Yovel year. Is the Yovel year 50? Or is as the Rabbanan hold, and then the cycle starts again? Huh?
The Torah says it does.
Yeah, it does. It does. So it seems pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But somehow Rabbi Yehuda thinks that the 50th year means it's the 50th year of the count, but it's also called the first year of the new count. The Shulchan Aruch actually ends up essentially seems to follow according to Rabbi Yehuda's Shita, which is actually what the Bali Tosefet hold. And the reason why this matters, we were just talking about Shal Shuz this past week, Parshat Bahar, is because if you consider Yovel a blank year, then in years when you don't actually observe Yovel, what do? Well, we know what we've been doing. We've been counting 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, no break. We don't ever get to Yovel because there are different conditions that are required in order to arrive at Yovel, at the requirement for Yovel. There's a bunch of different things that have to happen, which when they're not enforced, which for most of Jewish history have not been operative, there is no Yovel. So the question is, okay, so what happened to the count of Shemitah? And we tend to say that Shemitah is akin to Shabbos, like the Meshech Chochmah. So Shemitah is just like Shabbos. Why? They're both called Shabbat LaHashem. Why? They both involve a cease and desist order in terms of being involved in Malacha, having to do with in one case Malacha generally, in the other case the Malachat Aretz, things having to do with the land. Yovel, like Yom Tov, requires a Beit Din, a Sanhedrin Hagadol, in the case of Yom Tov, to proclaim the onset of a new month. In the case of Yovel, to make sure that they're going to have the declaration. The Torah itself declares, we saw this last week's parsha, B'safar Telecha, and because it's in the singular, we learned the Beit Din Hagadol in Yerushalayim has to keep the count. Do they literally have to every year have a Asher Gesom Sivano Al Sfirat HaYovel? That's less clear, but there is an idea that they have to announce something in some way on the 50th year. And what is that principally? The Tkiyat Shofar on Yovel. Questionable if that is. Most seem to hold it's on Yom Kippur of Yovel, right? But we had this other idea that maybe, again, there's something, this period of time, the first 10 days have this this ma'amad of being from the Shnat HaYovel, like these 10 days. We talked about this last time about the people, I just mentioned it when I started today, but them sitting in the would be small, Nosh Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, yeah? Now, why all this is relevant is I'm setting the stage for what we're about to learn in the Gemara tonight. So I wanted to make sure that we're sort of queued up to have recalled those previous sugyas. And again, there would be a pretty big, like Shabbos, it's every 7 days, no matter what happens. It's Kviya V'Kayama. So Shemitah is every 7 days. In a certain way, the logic of Rabbi Yehuda makes eminent sense to us. On the other side, as Benny has pointed out, and welcome back, Benny. See, after the whole winter.
Nice to be back.
That's good. Is the fact that we have we call it the Chamishim Shana, the Shana the Chamishim. It's called the 50th year. It sounds like it's an independent year, remember?
Yeah.
So according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's like a double dip, but it both is year 50 of the first cycle, and through the cycle they're all connected to each other, and therefore the absence of Yovel does not impact when we will celebrate or Shemitah. Well, celebrate. I mean, when we will observe Shemitah, uphold the mitzvah of Shemitah. So that's just, to have that in mind, sort of to sort of set the stage, because we have an idea that when we talk about Shemitah and Yovel beginning on Rosh Hashanah, we're talking about the count of the years in those cycles. But in terms of the observance of Shemitah, we actually begin the observance of Shemitah prior to Shemitah. And we actually have Shemitah extending beyond Shemitah. And this is the notion of Tosefet, of adding. And part of this will be familiar to us, for those who are journeying through Masechet Yoma. We'll come to it again. And that is the question of Tosefet. You have Tosefet Shabbat. Now it's Tosefet Shnat Shabbat Haaretz. So what does that entail? And that's what we're up to in the Gemara on Daf Tet Amud Aleph. Everybody's on board with me. Just I set the stage for what we're going to see tonight. So we're on the fourth line. Udemosifim Mechol HaKodesh Minalan. Right? The fact that we're going to add from the regular mundane day into the realm of Kodesh. We're elevating it. How do we get there? From where is that derived? Right now, as soon as it asks, Minalan, quoting a pasuk, unless we're going to find out someone's going to say it's an asmach, it means it's really a biblical mitzvah. It's an extension, but it's still considered right on the level of a Torah level law. So, the Tanya, Becharish uvekatzir tishbot, Rabbi Akiva Omer Einot Sarich Lomar Charish vekatzir shal Shviit, Sharik Far Nemar Sadchalo Tizra v'Gomer. Ella Charish shal Erev Shviit, Hanichnas LaShviit, Uktzir shal Shviit Hayotze Lemotze Shviit. According to Rabbi Akiva, and this will be, unless you know the Psukim off by heart, and that's why I have the Chumash, we're going to look this up together, right? It's so obvious that when the Torah declares, when it tells us B'charish v'katzir tishbot, Rabbi Akiva says that was redundant. It didn't have to be there, since the Torah elsewhere tells us Sadcha lo tizra v'karmecha lo tizmor. So what is that extra mention of Charish and Katzir that you should rest or cease and desist from plowing and from reaping that's mentioned in the Torah? Why is it a second time? It's a redundancy. The answer is that's how we learn about being Mosif Mechol HaKodesh. So if you're confused, that's good, because I'm Davka, just to read it through so we see what's happening, so we could see both Shitot inside. Rabbi Yishmael disagrees. Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael disagree. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Macharish Reshut, Af Ketzir Reshut. Just as generally plowing is considered volitional, so too reaping is also considered an act of volition, i.e., it will be prohibited to be done, let's say, on Shabbos. Yatza Ketzir HaOmer Shehu Mitzvah. Now, it was Torah again for Shabbos, because it's Sfirat HaOmer, so you could keep dipping in. It's just a gift that keeps on giving. It's going right back again. It's Sfirat HaOmer, and this is what we're up to. And that they were able to do if Sfirat HaOmer began on Shabbos, they would, right? That Friday, it was a Friday night, they would reap the barley harvest, at least for the Omer, for the Hanafat HaOmer, for the Korban HaOmer, rather. There's the Hanafat HaOmer, they're going to wave it around, etc. So Rabbi Yishmael, Mosifim Mechol HaKodesh Minalan. Where does he learn it from? He's going to learn it from another series of psukim. From where? From Parshat HaMoadot, which is in Vayikra Chal Gimel. I'm stopping there in the Gemara, because I'm sure, we saw the words, translation, great. But what I want to show you now is, this is a fundamental disagreement between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael about how the Torah is organized, and in a certain way, what Matan Torah at Har Sinai means. So when you open up the Chumash, the first pasuk that's being described here is in Parshat Mishpatim. So we open Parshat Mishpatim. We find that on page 434, right? 434, we find that there is actually a mention of this Yom Tov of Shemitah, right? Right. And Shemitah actually does appear right here. Page 434, it's in Mishpatim. Right? You have Pasuk Yud and Yud Aleph and Yud Bet. Okay? V'sheishanim tizrat atzech v'safta tvuata. V'ashviit tishmetena unetashta v'achlu evyonei amecha v'yitram tochal chayat hasadeh kein ta'aseh l'charmecha l'zeitecha. Sheshet yamim ta'aseh ma'asecha u'v'yom hashviit tishbot l'man yanuach shorcha v'chamorecha v'yinafesh ben amatecha v'hager. By the by, was there a mention here of the pasuk that we just quoted in the Gemara? Look carefully. The words "b'charish v'katzir tishbot" do not appear in Parshat Mishpatim. But why did I take you here first? Because it's the first mention of Shemitah in the Torah. It's happening at Har Sinai. And do you notice the seamless passage between 6+1 and 6+1? The movement from Shemitah of 6 years work, 7th year Shemitah, Tishmetenu Tashta, and then the next pasuk Yud Bet, speaks about 6 days. Sheshit Yamim Tasema Secha Mishvit Tishbot. Interesting, by the by, not a topic for now, but just looking at the psukim, pasuk Yud Aleph, the leftover, that which is the surplus, will be eaten by whom? By the animals. Chayat Hasadeh. And the very next pasuk, thank you. But I wanted to make the point about the animals only because in Yud Bet, L'man yanuach shorcha v'chamorecha, the same idea, the animals will rest. And I was going to say that the impoverished person is not mentioned there, so presumably of course they're resting. There's no chiddush, they're a Jew like anybody else. The chiddush is that the extra food gets to go to Evyonei Amecha when it comes to Shemitah. But again, the same parallel, it's over a number of psukim. It's like, this is suddenly talking about Shemitah. Oh, and then we're talking about Shabbos. They're really intrinsically linked. The first time it appears. Then we find it in other places as well. So you turn to Perek Lamed, what?
In Parsha Ki Tisach mentioned Ba'asir.
Oh, so that's what we're going to get to. That's Lamed Daled. So now go to Perek Lamed Daled in Shmot. Perek Lamed Daled. That's the next time it's mentioned. Right? Also, standing at Har Sinai, Perek Lamed Daled, toward the end of the chapter. Yeah, Chaf Aleph, right? Page 512. I note that on page 510, it's talking about the different holidays, Chag HaMatzot Tishmor, right, etc. And Sheshit Yamim Tavod, Uvayom HaShviit Tishbot, Becharish Uvakatzir Tishbot. And then what's the next pasuk? B'Chag Shavuot Taseh Lecha Bikurei Katzir Chitim. So somehow work 6 days on the 7th day rest, or cease your work, and then it repeats again, plowing and reaping you shall cease, or rest from those things. So is this a din in Shabbos? Like, it's all about Shabbos because there's, instead of, you would think it would be, which is what you have in Vayikra Chav Gimel, the headquarters for all the Moedot, you have Shabbos, Pesach, Korban HaOmer, Sfirat HaOmer, and then you get to, right after that, you have, right, then it comes to Rosh Hashanah, right, in between there's actually a mitzvah about taking care of the poor, but then you get to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. So is this that same thing, just in a different order? Pesach, Shabbos, Shavuos, Sukkot, is that what's happening here? Right? I mean, it mentions all three. And here, by the by, it's 6+1. 6 days you shall work, and the 7th you shall rest. From the plowing and the reaping you shall rest. And then what's the next holiday? It's also about cycles of 7. Just interesting. That's organized that way. So what is that pasuk about? And could the same pasuk be talking about 2 different realms? One, Shabbos of the week, and the other, Shabbos of the year. That's part of the discussion, part of the debate that's going on here. Now, is everyone with me? And both of these sources, of course, happen at Har Sinai, right? Because the Jewish people are encamped at Har Sinai. In neither case is there a Beit HaMikdash or even an Ol Moed. There's no Mishkan. It hasn't been built yet, right? In neither case. In Parshat Mishpatim, Klal Yisrael is standing at Har Sinai. They've just received the Torah. Means the first part of the revelation by Hashem to the Jewish people transpires, and they say we can't handle it. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then, right? Moshe, you listen for us. It's right at the end of Yitro. And then we get to the parshiot that come after that. And what do you have? Moshe Rabbeinu sallies forth. You have the whole parsha, including a mention right there of Shemitah. Yeah. And Shabbos, and it's mentioning everything. Shabbos is mentioned in the Aseret Dibrot, but it's mentioned again. And then the 40 days and 40 nights happen at the end of Parshat Mishpatim, because that's as it goes up. Comes back down, the smashing of the Luchot, sadly, the tragedy and catastrophe that transpires. The next piece is the Luchot Shniot. He's getting the second set. And this is the transmission, if you will, on the second go around, when the Brit, the covenant, is being renewed, essentially. All right. The first covenant was Nasiv and Ishmael, was the end of Parshat Mishpatim. Now you're getting the second Luchot. Now it's Hashem Karachim V'chanarach Apayim. It's the page before, right? It's page 508. It's Hashem Karachim V'chanarach. Everyone with me? And as you go through the psukim, you find out Taka. It's mentioning again, but here it doesn't say Shemitah exactly. It says 6 days you shall work, and the 7th day you shall rest. And you shall, the plowing and the harvesting, you shall rest from it. So you see that all here. And in this one, do you understand what the case might be for why it refers Davka to Shemitah? When you go back to Parshat Mishpatim, it also starts mentioning Shabbat, holidays, and Shabbat, but also mentions Shemitah. Remember?
Right. Yeah.
Here, it's mentioning the holidays again. So is it not impossible that the same pasuk could refer to the weekday version and the 7-year cycle version, the 7-day and 7-year cycle? Okay, is it pushed into one pasuk? Yeah, but you know what else is pushed into one pasuk? Shavuot and Sukkot. It's the very next pasuk. Shiva, where is it? V'chag Shavuot tasel l'cha bikorei ketzir chitim. V'chag asif tkufat hashana. Shalosh pamim hashana yerkol zuchurcha, etc. So it's not unheard of to say pasuk could be talking about 2 different things. Okay, everybody with me so far? Now I'm adding the next layer, which will explain the Rashi that is always the Rashi everybody likes to quote, right? Beginning of Parshat Bahar, which we call rightly the headquarters. I call it the headquarters, my Rebbe, the headquarters of Shemitah. How come? It's not the first time it's in the Torah, but you have the most detail there, page 696. By Daber, Adonai and Moshe behar Sinai lemor. Daber. It's given at Har Sinai, and which begs the question, which Rashi poses, Ma, right? Ma, Inyan Shemitah Eitzel Har Sinai, right? I can't avoid the digression because it etched in my mind. Moiv Rabbi by Jacob J. Schachter says the first time he went to Israel, and he was in a hotel, he decided to turn on TV, and there was a show called Kojak. Those remember? It was Kojak.
Yeah.
So I forgot already the names of the characters, but the whatever the sidekick's name was, says to Kojak says something, and the sidekick says to him, "What does that have to do with the price of tea in China?" And the underneath in Hebrew, what did it say in the caption? Ma inyan Shemitah Eitzel Har Sinai. There you have it. So he realized it's made it. It's, you know, that's the Torah's made it. It's on Kojak. It's Kojak at the bottom. It's Israeli, because that's the Israeli translation of what does that do with the price of tea in China? You know, Maza Shayach L'Mechir Tei B'Sin. No one would understand what that means. But this, it was a generation. Today, who would understand it? I don't know. I guess people who learn Rashi. Yeah, but Hayu Yamim, when people, even if they maybe weren't as observant as they should be, they knew what's what. Okay, so that is a question. Why is it a question? Because the end of Sefer Shmot, there's a building of a Mishkan, and the beginning of Sefer Vayikra is actually taking place in the Ol Moed. So, Ma'in and Shemitah Eitzel Har Sinai. What did you bring it up that it's at Har Sinai? First of all, they're now getting the transmission, so to speak, from the Ol Moed. So what's this doing here? Number one. Number two, it's not the first time it appears in the Torah. It showed up twice already. Yeah, or at least once that it's obvious that it's it. And the second time, maybe it was a reference to Shemitah. Yeah. So that's a question, like what is this doing here? The Ramban, the Chizkuni, all the Mefarshei Mikra try to explain like what's the sequencing of the Torah. It's not a Chumash class, but this is all the entree to try to get to this Machloket between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, and understand in a deeper way, is not just about the derivation of psukim, but as we'll soon see, has to do with the core of Matan Torah itself. You can take this with you to the Yom Tov Haba Aleinu Latova in just a couple of weeks' time. So on page 696, Vayidaber Adonai Moshe Behar Sinai Limor Daber Bnei Yisrael Amarta Alehem Ki Tavo El Haaretz Asher Ani Noten Lachem V'Shavta Haaretz Shabbat Ladonai. And of course, the words Shabbat La Hashem, that's already in Aseret Dibrot. Shabbat La Hashem Elokecha. And there's a parallel there, of course. Sheish Shanim Tizra Sadecha V'Sheish Shanim Tizmor Karmecha Ve'asafta et Tuata. So it's right here. Yeah. Then we read Pasuk Dalid. This is the one quoted in the Gemara. Uvashana Shviit Shabbat Shabbaton Yiyeh La'aretz Shabbat Ladunai Sadcha Lo Tizra V'Charmecha Lo Tizmor. I paused in the middle because, of course, what two words jump out as reminders of another Yom Tov that is called Shabbat Shabbaton. So maybe in some way Shemitah is the Yom Kippurim of Shabbos, like Shabbat Shabbaton is Yom Kippurim. Like, what does that mean? But hold that thought. We're coming to it in the Gemara, but just right and
no, because we say v'initem et nafshotechem, and so therefore Shabbat. So therefore that you were
nice. You're withdrawing from your ability to enjoy the land in a certain way, at least in terms of the reaping harvest.
Exactly.
That's great. That's a beautiful idea. Thank you for that. That's nice. That's nice. Yeah. Anyway, okay, there's more here, and this is why it's the headquarters, right? It talks about Sfichin, right? The Sfiach that just grows on its own. In Venus Ziracha, don't do the B'tzira on that. Again, Shabbat Shabbaton Yeh La'aretz, V'ayta Shabbat Ha'aretz Lachem Le'ochla L'cha U'Le'avdecha V'La'amatecha V'Lischircha U'Toshavcha Grimach V'Liv Techa V'Lachaya Asher Be'atzecha Tiyeh Chol Tvuata Le'echol. So now it's like everybody's mentioned. It's the most detailed source that we have. Now to see what's going on for a moment in the Gemara, and then we'll dial back. We'll see the Gemara in Zvachim, Rashi and the Gemara in Zvachim. So just right, what's the Machloket here? Daftet Amud Aleph. Rabbi Akiva holds that when the Torah, the real Machloket here is not in Parshat Bahar, it's really in Parshat Kitisa. When the Torah has one pasuk that maybe is about two different contexts, Shabbos the weekly, Shabbos the septennially. What? Yeah, exactly. Or, and it's in the same pasuk, because they're just so close together, which in Mishpatim there are two different pasukim, but they're right next to each other. Or maybe no, the pasuk just means one holiday, and that's it. We have to figure out this idea from somewhere else. The point that we know to be true is that there are 39 malachot. So why are Charisha and Ketzira suddenly being pulled out? Charisha is the beginning of the process of preparing the land, and Ketzira is the culminating process of reaping the harvest. But they're not actually the bookends of the whole process necessarily. By the way, there's a machloket if Zoreya or Choresh comes first. Because the question is, did you put down the seeds and plow to put it in the ground, or did you plow and then drop the seeds in? So it may not even really be the first thing. But either way, there are steps between Charisha and Ketzira that are happening, i.e. Zuriya, and there are steps after Ketzira till you're eating the food anyway. Like, why are those two things singled out? There must be a reason. Otherwise, it's superfluous because they're already known they're part of the 39 Malachot. How do we know this is a very relevant conversation? Because at the beginning of Parshat Vayakel, when it's singled out Havara, the Gemara and Klal Gadol is debating back and forth. Is it Lelav Yatzat or is it for the Chilukei Malachot that it was Yotzei? Remember? This discussion over there, right? Why is Havara mentioned explicitly when the rest of the other 38 are not? Well, maybe two others of the 39 are also mentioned, right? Which are Harisha and Ketzira. Maybe this have to do with Shabbos. By the way, what about Hotzah? Maybe it's mentioned perhaps elsewhere as well. Some want to argue maybe Tchumen. That's another discussion, not for today. But what do you have here is B'charsh v'katzir tishbot. I'm on line 5 in the Gemara here. Rabbi Akiva Omer Eno Tzorech Lomar Charish v'katzir Shal Shviit Shar Kvar Namar. It already says so. Where does it already say so? In Parshat Behar, Sadcha lo tizra v'gomer. Okay, so in other words, let me say it differently. Rabbi Akiva basically says, look, when the Torah tells you in Parshat Kitisa, B'charish uvakatzir tishbot, it can't be referring to the actual prohibition of plowing and harvesting in the year of Shemitah. You know why? Because that already appears later in the Torah in Parshat Bahar. You'll tell me, I'm sorry, but what about the sequence? Parshat Kitisa comes in the Torah before Parshat Bahar. What's the answer? Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Behar Sinai Leimor. And you know what Har Sinai means? Behar Sinai. Physically, he was told this Behar Sinai with these details. So anything else that he hears is something else, and therefore it's a very high station. So therefore, Ella Charish shel erev Shviit anichnas l'Shviit v'katzir shel Shviit yotze l'motzei Shviit. What Rabbi Akiva does here is he explains why are these the two malachot that are singled out, because the first step to get ready for planting something, according to Rabbi Akiva at least, is not the zriya, it's the charisha. So you're going to do that, the earliest step, maybe even within 30 days of Shemitah starting. So if it's within 30 days of Shemitah, 30 days and onward, before, you're not allowed to do charisha already for the new year. You just can't. You're not allowed to do so, obviously, on the year of Shemitah, but not even 30 days before. And what's Katsira? Because it's the last step, because some things maybe ended up growing and during the Shemitah year, and when will they come to be ripe enough? You have a third of the growth of it, so it's ready for harvesting. When's that going to be? The Katsira after Rosh Hashanah into year 8. So you might think, yeah, it's year 8 now. No. So that's why Becharish of a Katzir Tishbot teaches us before and after, and it's the add-on, it's the accessory, that you put onto the main mitzvah, which is this Parshat Bahar. Rabbi Shmuel doesn't agree. Rabbi Shmuel Omer Macharish Reshut Af Ketzir Reshut. So why are Charisha and Ketzira pulled out? To tell you that these two things you need to cease and desist from. This is Parshat Kitisa, Becharish v'Katzir Tishbot, because these two things generally are volitional, and it's putting a finger on it, like highlighting, and these things are not allowed when they're volitional. But if you had a mitzvah reason to be engaged in them, i.e., Ksirat HaOmer, you need the Ksirat HaOmer to do the Hanafa, the Korban HaOmer, so then it would be permissible. So Macharish Reshut, Af Ketzir Reshut. So if there was a Ketzira, that was itself, the act of Ketzira, the cutting itself, was a mitzvah, that would supersede Shabbos. What's that example? Ksirat HaOmer. Right? Shu mitzvah. Now, two things. One, and they're both about Rabbi Yishmael. One, I mean, it seems like a little more of a challenging derivation, no? Like, I don't know. So from there, Chazal understand. It means that if the Brit Milah falls on Shabbos, you're gonna do the Brit. Right. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to, and yet you don't have elsewhere in the Torah that it says on Shabbos you shall not cut things. It doesn't have to say that, because there's a specific positive mitzvah. I think that you understand my question on Rabbi Shmuel. So it comes to this, like, oh, why is Charish and Katzir Tishbot? It's to tell you that if there was something that wasn't a reshut, that was actually a mitzvah, it would supersede Shabbos. So I think the only thing I can answer for Rabbi Shmuel, my limited understanding is that the Torah did not say when the let me say it positively. When it came to Brit Milah, it says Uvayom Hashmini Yimol B'Sor Lato, regardless of what day it is. It's even you hear the cadence of it in the pasuk. It has to be on the 8th day. But the Ketzirat HaOmer, it seems to have more to do with not the Ketzira, but the bringing of the Korban HaOmer on the 16th. So maybe they would do it a day before. It's Shabbos, so do a day before. It's not going to go bad. But maybe, right, but maybe the problem is that it has to be Macharat HaShabbat, and you have to bring the Korban HaOmer on the 16th. So maybe Taka, we're as locked in to that day, and if it falls on Shabbos, so be it. So be it. We're going to do it there as well. We have to derive it as such. The second issue with Rabbi Shmuel, of course, is okay. So how does he learn Tosefet Shviit? Everybody agrees that it's a mitzvah min haTorah. So you're not going to get it from that pasuk. You better find another place to find it. Okay, so pause there, pressing pause on the shir in terms of moving ahead. Like, where does he go? He's going to go to Vayikra Chav Gimel and learn it involving Yom Kippur, etc. Before we go there, I wanted to analyze further page 696. It gives us a window into how Rabbi Akiva's thinking about it and how Rabbi Yishmael's thinking about it. And it actually impacts the degree to which they're willing to make the derivations that they're making from what they found in these psukim, what they understood. So Rashi, beginning page 696, very famously, Ma'in and Shemitah Eitz Har Sinai, V'la kol mitzvot near Sinai, aren't all the mitzvot spoken at Har Sinai. Ella, rather. Ma Shemitah nemnu klalotea upirtotea v'diktukea mi Sinai, just as Shemitah, all its general principles, its details, and its nuances or derivations, they all come from Sinai. Af kulan ne'amru klalotein v'diktukein mi Sinai. It's the example that is drawn out in order to prove everything else. Now, just as this has all of its principles, general principles, details, and derivations, everything came from Har Sinai, so too all the mitzvot, general and specific information, everything came from Har Sinai. Kach shinuya b'Torah Kohanim. It's actually the beginning of Torah Kohanim, the very beginning of Torah Kohanim, the Medrash Halacha on Sefer Vayikra. Right? And the reason why this is very significant, of course, is because it is already at the beginning of Sefer Vayikra telling you that Hashem's talking to Moshe Rabbeinu in the Old Moed, and obviously they read ahead. So they know they're going to mention Har Sinai. So how come? This is the mitzvah that is pulled out to tell you whatever you're going to see, whatever you're going to hear later, everything else is somehow a repetition of what was told at Har Sinai. And this is the proof. Venirali, says Rashi, Shekach Pirusha. This is what it means. Lefi shalom matzinu shmitat karkaot shenishnet ba'arvot Moav b'Mishnah Torah. In the Sefer Dvarim, it doesn't mention Shemitah of land. There's Shemitah Ksafim, but not the Shemitah of land. So Lamadnu, Sheklalotea upirtotea, some say uperusha, some say, Kula Nanu Misinai. That we learned from here, everything was taught at Har Sinai. Uba Katuv, V'lamed Kan, Al Kol Dibur Shenidaber Lemoshe, Mishemisina Hayukulam. Klalotean, V'ditukean, everything, every dibur that you see that is spoken to Moshe, even if it says the Ol Moed, you should just be aware that really was already all spoken to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai. The general principles and all the details of everything was told to him at Har Sinai. V'chazru v'nishnu ba'arvot Moav. They will be repeated again when? In Sefer Dvarim. In Sefer Dvarim, before they go into the land of Israel. So whatever you don't see in Sefer Dvarim, it's another Sefer in Chumash, right? And whatever you see in Sefer Dvarim, so it's just a repetition. It's for Chazara, but and if new details are being revealed in Sefer Dvarim that didn't exist, we don't know of them in the earlier Sfarim. So Rashi says we already knew from Har Sinai. This is just Chazara. That is what Rashi tells us, and it explains why at the capping, portion of Sefer Vayikra, it reverts back to Har Sinai. How come? To tell you that everything was really from Har Sinai. And before, what's going to happen in Sefer Bamidbar? Why couldn't it just be later in the Torah? Because Sefer Bamidbar, they leave Har Sinai. Physically, they get up and they leave. So this mitzvah is pulled out according to Rashi. Yeah? Everyone with me? So the Gemara in Zvachim, this is Zvachim Kuftet Vav Amud Bet. tells us that actually, I better get it on the screen for you at home. Sorry. If you have a Zvachim at home, you're looking at Kuf Tet Vav Amud Bet. I'll try to get on Hebrew books. Give me 1 second. Give me a minute. See what I can do. It turns out, I'll try to multitask over here. It turns out that there's actually a Machloket. And who's the Machloket between? Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael. What's the Machloket about? How much and in what level of detail, not how much, but how much, what is the level of detail of what was conveyed at Har Sinai? And it turns out, and Rashi does this sometimes, it's editorial choices that Rashi makes, and it's Rashi, so Memenu Anu Shotim, and that's all. But according to Rashi, we have a one opinion, and everybody agrees to it. But it turns out that not everybody agrees to it. It's actually a machloket between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael. So in the printed version, you have it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up. It's also Gemara in Chagiga and a Gemara in Sota. So the Tanya, Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Klalot b'chaf Ne'amru b'Sinai Pratot be'ol moed. General principles were all conveyed at Har Sinai, but the details, those were conveyed in the Ol Moed. That's what he maintains. And Rabbi Akiva Omer, Klalot upratot ne'amru b'Sinai. Everything was spoken at Har Sinai. Everything, every jot and tittle of halacha. V'nishnu be'ol Moed, repeated a second time the Ol Moed. V'nishtalshu be'arvot Moav, and the third time is at Arvot Moav. Rashi, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines up from the bottom, and Rashi on this daf. I'll do it on the screen. Okay, you have it here. Klalot Ne'amru b'Sinai, Kigon Mizbach Adama Tasali v'Zavachta Alav. So that was already told to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai. Where does that appear? In chapter 20 in Sefer Shmot, right after Aseret HaDibrot. He's being told this before Parshat Mishpatim. So that's already at Sinai. He's told that. V'lo nitparshu hilchot ola ushlamim sham. Right? This is in the view of Rabbi Yishmael. He heard that there was going to be a Mizbach Adama. He gave Korbanot Har Sinai. But the halachot of how to do an ola and a shlamim were not given there. Pratot be'ol moed. L'achash hukam mishkan nemra torat kohanim l'Moshe. After the Mishkan was assembled and it was getting ready to be inaugurated, so you have already a place. Okay, so now Moshe Rabbeinu hears everything. V'shamni parshu v'hivshit v'nitech, etc. That's when he was going to hear all of the details. Shaminan l'Rabbi, we say Shaminan l'Rabbi Yishmael. The opposite. Shaminan l'Rabbi Yishmael. The ola sheikrivu b'Sinai lo hut'ana hefshet v'nituach. According to Rabbi Yishmael, the korbanot that were offered at Har Sinai were not done according to the halachot of hefshet and nituach, of the skinning of the animal and the cutting of it into pieces. It wasn't a requirement yet. Moshe didn't know about it. At Brit Sinai, when they said Nasiv and Ishma, the korbanot that are offered, then they didn't know about it. It wasn't told to them. They would find out only when? Later on. According to Rabbi Akiva, who disagrees, second to last line in Rashi, V'nishtal shuv avot Moav, Mishnah Torah shechazar Moshe v'amar lahem al haseder. Kedichtiv be'ever hayardain be'eretz Moav ho'il Moshe. It goes on be'eret razot le'mor. Moshe now did a chazara, and he gave it to them in a certain order. Where? In Arvot Moav in the 40th year. That's Rabbi Akiva's view. He has really a maximalist view of how much was given at Har Sinai. They both agree that Torah is Sinai. The question is, what do we mean by it? Everything? And everything after that is this, every time it says more, it's just repeating something that Moshe Rabbeinu already knew, but now it's Lamor. I told it to you on Har Sinai, now convey it to Klal Yisrael. Or is it, Moshe, this is a chiddush for you too. These details that you didn't know when you were on Har Sinai, that now you do know, and you are going to convey to Klal Yisrael. Right?
Because Dvarim is chock full of mitzvahs.
Chock full of mitzvahs. Right.
So to now-
But the question is, does Sefer Dvarim strengthen Rabbi Yishmael's case, or does it strengthen Rabbi Akiva's case? What do you think? The way Sefer Dvarim functions, whose case does it strengthen? Just think about, and Rashi quoted here that pasuk, right? So if you open up let's do it. So, we're here already. And I'm trying to enrich everyone's understanding of the Matan Torah as part of this for obvious reasons. Page 938. All right. There's a lot of geographical dating and time and space, geographical information, timing information. You get to page 940 and you look at Pasuk Hey. Page 940. Moshe is explaining the Torah. Hashem Elokim diber elenu b'chorev lemor rav lachem shevet b'har hazeh. Yeah, Hashem told us to leave Har Sinai, etc. And then you're going to go later into the Sefer, and there's mitzvahs all over the place. There's mitzvahs, right? So when were those mitzvahs given? The Torah actually says at the beginning that Moshe is explaining the Torah. He's not coming. There's no new mitzvahs that he's receiving now. He's explaining something that came before. So what would Rabbi Shmuel say back? Well, is he explaining what he got on Har Sinai? Or is he explaining things that he learned in Arvot Moav, even that he was not told to write down at that time? From the Ol Moed. He wasn't told to write down the details, I'm saying, of mitzvahs that appeared early. You follow what I'm saying? It's not clear that its strength is one case or the other. I could make the case for Rabbi Akiva, but Be'er Torah, he's just explaining what already was. So how can we never heard about it before? Well, it was all in Har Sinai, but now he's saying what he's saying because now it's becoming.
Both are right, because you have the command in Vayikra that once Moshe erected and dedicated the Mishkan, God spoke to him, Vayikra and Moshe, the Ohel Moed. At that time, Ohel Moed was in Sinai, wasn't it? Right,
Exactly. And that's where they're getting that's where they're getting the communication is they're still at the foot of Har Sinai, right?
And deals with the Korbanot.
True. Don't forget, Hashem's talking to him also in the beginning of Sefer B'Midbar. Still happening.
So you say that for the intervening 38 years, Moshe never told him about this, and all of a sudden it's brand new.
Lav davka, no, lav davka. No, he might for sure. I mean, for sure they're learning Torah the whole time. That's like that's for sure because they have all the content they got from Har Sinai and everything, the Ol Moed, etc. But it's possible that Moshe Rabbeinu does not hear from a Kadosh Baruch Hu directly at all during those 38 years. But it doesn't mean that in year 40 that necessarily Hashem's now telling him new things never heard before. Nobody holds that. Right? Even Rabbi Shmuel is saying, look, the general principles he got at Har Sinai, but there are details that maybe have to be filled out, right? There's a whole study of Sefer Dvarim that we could do. It's not for now, but it has to do it. And we should be thinking about these issues when we come to the Yom Tov of Zman Matan Torah Teinu to understand. Okay, so what does it mean? We got the Torah. What? When? What? Now, to Benny's point, as long as the Mishkan was actually encamped at Har Sinai, right? So there's a changeover that's described in 3 places in the Torah: Parshat Pekudei, Parshat Shmini, Parshat Naso, 3 times over that it describes that Hashem's talking to Moshe Rabbeinu, Ben Shnei Akruvim, or at least that the Shekhinah is Ben Shnei Akruvim. Sorry, it doesn't say that Hashem spoke to him in Pekudei, but the voice is right. But that's the gist of it. So now I'll throw you like a curveball to make the whole thing like what? So they're still encamped at Har Sinai. So you could say that's still at Har Sinai. From Har Sinai, it's in the Ol Moed, but it's connected. But can I ask you, when they left Har Sinai, didn't they take Har Sinai with them in some way?
Mishkan was a replica almost.
Okay, and more directly, more pshat. Isn't some of Har Sinai with them? No, the Luchot Habrit, no. They have the Luchot. It's a piece of the Solacha Shnei Avanim Karishonim. That's right. It's where do you think it came from? Har Sinai. That piece of the rock. That's it. And it's the middle of the. It's the middle of the Mishkan. Yeah, and you can understand what it means. It doesn't exactly mean this in the level of pshat, but I'll just say it because it sounds like a good piece of drush. But it is actually what the pasuk says. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah dvar Hashem Yerushalayim. Ech echol liot. Because in the middle is the Aaron with the Luchot Habrit. Okay. Now, all of this was the background to go back to our Gemara. That's what we're really here for. But I hope you understand. That's why I want to do this excursus tonight. We give a little bit of time for it. Okay, what is Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva? What are they going on about? Now go back to the Machloket, and you plug it in again, and you see it now in a different light. I hope in an enriched light. According to Rabbi Akiva, right? According to Rabbi Akiva, everything was already said at Har Sinai. Every single thing was told to them, right? So therefore, if at Har Sinai it already said, at Har Sinai we already heard the piece about Becharish V'Katzir Tishbot, and now at Har Sinai also, Moshe knew all of this. This is a question of plugging in what goes where, but that's the derivation. It must be from this section. So Rabbi Akiva Omer, and Tzarich Lomar Charish V'Katzir Shel Shviit, Shekvar Nemar Sadchal Tizra. That's Bihar Sinai, doesn't mean at Har Sinai, but on Har Sinai. Moshe was on Har Sinai, Hashem told him that. And then Moshe Rabbeinu came down Har Sinai. So to say it in a different language, sorry if this was confusing, Parshat Bahar happens and Moshe Rabbeinu is up on Har Sinai. And then he comes down, the Luchot gets smashed, and then comes the episode of the renewal of the Brit. And that's where this pasuk comes, B'charish v'katzer tishbot. Now you understand why it's a detail on a mitzvah we already know about Shemitah, because Moshe Rabbeinu learned it on Har Sinai, because he learned everything on Har Sinai. So he comes down, tells them, and I'm adding to tell you now also, this piece about B'charish v'katzir tishbot means to say, this is the Tosefet, right? So the point is, where am I here? Charish shel erev Shviit, and nichnas l'Shviit, v'katzir shel Shviit, ayot l'motzei Shviit. That's what it must mean, because it came after they were already on Har Sinai. The Moshe was on Har Sinai, and he already got the mitzvah Shemitah on Har Sinai. Rabbi Yishmael disagrees. Rabbi Yishmael thinks the klalot, it's confusing, but it's klalot with a chaf, obviously, the general principles. Right, and all this applies to Eretz Yisrael, which they haven't arrived at yet.
Moshe learned everything on Har Sinai.
What?
Never went to Eretz Yisrael. And the people who went out of Mitzrayim, most of them died.
Right.
And none of this applies.
Well, that's probably what it's not doing. Yeah. Right.
It's all.
And in the end, who's it apply to? The future.
The future people.
Yeah.
Who weren't in Har Sinai.
What an amazing mitzvah to have taken out that, because it's that. But isn't that the point?
They weren't. They didn't have. They didn't. Harvest anything.
Yeah, but they already had the mitzvahs of what to do. So it works that way sometimes. Well, they knew about it because Moshe taught them. Yeah, so Rabbi Yishmael thinks they knew at Har Sinai, Hashem tells them the klalot, and later Hashem tells him the details. So according to Rabbi Yishmael, Macharish Rishut Af Katzir Rishut. So the Katzir HaOmer, okay, so right, that's Yatzik Katzir HaOmer, Shehu that's actually a chova, Shehu mitzvah. Yeah. So now the Gemara says, okay, so Rabbi Yishmael, so how do you know about the Hosafa? Where's the Hosafa from? The Hosafa is from Torah that was taught to Moshe Rabbeinu. Where? In detail? In the Ol Moed. It's not that he doesn't know the Klalim, but now the pratim, meaning the derivations of the words and the language that you see in those psukim, is more, whatever the word is, more, I was going to say granular, but it's not really the right word. It's more, it's more detailed. It's more detailed. So, and that's the point, right? So he doesn't mind. He'll say, the derivation is in Parshat Emor in Sefer Vayikra, which is in the Ol Moed. Hashem's telling him the Ol Moed, these details. Rabbi Yishmael, Mosifin Mechol HaKodesh Minalan. How does he learn it? Nafkale midatanya v'initem et nafshotechem b'tish'ah. You should afflict your soul on the 9th. Yachol b'tisha, maybe on the 9th. Really on the 9th. You should afflict your soul, meaning you should fast on the 9th. Talmud Lamar ba'erev. It's on the 9th in the evening. Ba'erev yachol mishatech. If it's in the evening, maybe it should be once it's dark. Talmud Lamar b'tisha. Has to be still the 9th of Tishrei. Right? HaKetzad. How do you actually do that? Matchil mitana mi ba'od yom. Milamed shemosif mechol HaKodesh. Right? So that tells you that you're mosif mechol HaKodesh. So the Gemara says, okay, elo b'knisato, b'yetziato minayin. How do you know at the end of Yom Kippurim you have to add a little bit of time? Talmud Lomar, me erev ad erev. The Torah says me erev ad erev. I'll finish the sentence and then we'll analyze this. Ein li ela Yom Kippurim. So this is only about Yom Kippur. Shabbatot minayin. How do you know about Shabbos? Talmud lomar tishbetu. Because the Torah says tishbetu Shabbatchem. So Yamim Tovim minayin. Talmud lomar Shabbatchem. Yeah. So haketzad. Kol makom sheyesh bo shvut mosifim mechol hakodesh. So in other words, where did he get it from? Anytime that it mentions a shvut, the implication is it's going to have a pre and a post. But remember what Yom Kippur is called? Shabbat Shabbaton. And what else is called Shabbat Shabbaton? Shemitah. And therefore the idea of the Tosefet, right? Yom Kippurim, Tosefet Shabbat, Tosefet Yom Tov, Tosefet on Shemitah. There's an Isser Shvut, but you could even connect it, the words Shabbat Shabbaton. And therefore, again, to back it up, for Rabbi Yishmael, the pasuk that we have in Parshat Kitisa is only about the Shabbos of the weekly Shabbos, and it's consistent because it's telling you a detail that has to do with the Ketzira of the Omer. By the way, why did he pull out the Omer of all things? Because what's the next pasuk after that? Mentions Chag HaShavuot. Remember?
Yeah.
So it didn't mention Tzfirat HaOmer in there. Where is it? It's hiding in B'charish V'Katzir Tishbot. Understand? For Rabbi Yishmael. That's where it is doing there. And by the by, to clarify, when I said Hashem's telling Moshe Rabbeinu the Parshat HaMoadot of Sefer Vayikra and Parshat Emor from the Ol Moed, he already knows the klalim, the general principles of there being holidays. How come? Because we just read about it in Parshat Mishpatim and in Parshat Kitisa. You follow? He knows the general. Now he's getting the details in the Ol Moed. So according to Yishmael, you know what else he's getting detail about? A detail about Shemitah as well. And the principle is that he had heard Shabbat Shabbaton. He knew that there was going to be the prohibition on plowing and sowing and reaping and the whole thing. But now he finds, and it turns out that the notion of Tosefet applies not just in time, but also in time of holidays, but also in the time of the Shnat Shabbaton, of Shabbat Shabbaton, Shabbat LaHashem, of Shemitah. So, that's I think that's all we have time for tonight, because I wanted to get to the next piece, but I don't know. I'm a little worried we're not going to get there, because they're going to next time we're going to have to see, Rabbi Akiva. What does he do with the Vinitim and Nafshoteichem, Batisha? What's he going to do with it? He has to learn Tosefet from somewhere, he doesn't learn it from there. So what's he going to learn? Yeah. So that you'll have to come back next time for that. Okay. But I hope so. Let me just check to be 100% sure. Yeah. And then I'm going to be away. Right. So we're going to learn. Actually, we're going to learn next week. We'll have a shiur. Also 7. We'll have a shiur on Shavuot. We also have a shiur on Shavuot. We always do. It's probably second day, I guess. Probably the second day, yeah. and then I'm going to be away for a week, and then we'll be back on June 26th. Okay, I'll send out the information. Okay, that's what I have time for tonight. So thanks for coming.